Well, as some sections of the media continue to obsess with the revamp of Downing Street, something very interesting is happening. The British public still clearly couldn't care less. Like me, they have much bigger things to be worrying about than Westminster soap operas. And so you see yet another poll, this time Spectator tweeting, BMG Research, preferred Prime Minister, Boris Johnson up 5 to 40%. Keir Starmer down 4 to 24%. And yet you've got the BBC still trying to push this narrative. Why does the Downing Street flat revamp matter? So they're effectively trying to tell the British people why this story matters. I mean, isn't it for the British public to decide what actually matters in this country? And I know some journalists are just obsessed with personalities in Westminster, but the evidence is clear. The British people couldn't care less about any of this. As Martin Daubney tweeted out today, spoiler alert, I'm out on the campaign trail and literally 0 voters give a toss about or even talking about Boris's wallpaper or flat refurb. They are talking about lockdowns ending, getting their lives back, and Khan taxing their cars off the road. Twitter isn't the real world. And the remarkable thing that's happening here is, of course, you note the timing. This is all happening before a huge set of elections in May. What a coincidence. And you're seeing, yet again, as I've been pointing out, whether people like it or not, the British public are backing Boris Johnson and the Conservatives with greater support. I mean, if you looked at the narrative again, in the bubble, it would be that Labour would have by now, 10 or 15 point lead. In fact, Keir Starmer's still way behind Boris Johnson. In fact, the Labour Party still way behind the Conservatives. And as the Independent report with their research on this from BMG, a week ahead of those crucial elections, BMG puts Conservatives on 39 to Labour's 35, extending the Tory lead to 2 points. So yet another poll that actually doesn't even show Labour gaining a little bit. It shows the Conservatives extending their lead. When you go into personally, Boris Johnson's personal satisfaction ratings, they improve in this poll. He was picked as preferred Prime Minister over Keir Starmer by 40 to 24% compared to 35 and 28 in March. If you look at the research, if you look at the numbers, it's Keir Starmer's Labour Party who are actually losing support, not Boris Johnson's Conservatives. When you look at the personal ratings again in this poll, 41% of those questioned were satisfied with Boris Johnson's performance as PM versus 38% who are not. The result amounted to the Independent report to a marked improvement on last month's poll. By contrast, Starmer's satisfaction rating has deteriorated from a positive finding of 29 to 27 in March to a negative rating of 23% satisfaction and 32% dissatisfaction now. When you break this down, and this is key, but geographically, the Independent report in the northeast, the ratio of dissatisfaction with Johnson stood at 50 to 27%. In the northwest, 42 to 35, and in the West Midlands, 41 to 39. So that's positive ratings there all over the country. By contrast, Starmer's satisfaction, traditional Labour strongholds, was negative. And finally, among party voters, and this is something I've highlighted before, Conservative Party voters are much more satisfied with Boris Johnson than Labour voters are with Keir Starmer. 44% in this poll of Labour Party voters are satisfied with Keir Starmer compared to 72% for Boris Johnson. So look guys, once again, this isn't about whether you're pro or anti-Boris Johnson, whether you're pro or anti-Conservative. What I'm keen to highlight here is the fact that you've got a media narrative that seems to be living on a completely different planet from mainstream British public opinion. And you would have thought people would have learned, wouldn't you, from Brexit, from votes we've seen before, this disconnect that we see of people who need to get out of London a bit more and speak to people really is becoming an even wider gulf. And I guarantee you, between now and election day, you'll see this obsession over so-called sleaze in Westminster continue. And I suspect you'll see these polls continue in much the same vein. The evidence is clear. The British public are still backing Boris Johnson's Conservatives by a wide margin over Keir Starmer's Labour Party. And I still think you're much more likely to see a challenge to the Labour Party leadership. Let me know what you make of all of this, guys. Do these numbers surprise you or not? Do you agree with what I've said or not? I'm a big boy, I can take it. Let me know in the comments below. As ever, if you've enjoyed this report, please do give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you hit the join button. See the link in the top pinned comments. Become a member here on the channel. I would really appreciate your support. And of course, as ever, thanks for watching.